Welcome to Mainland, your local regional television station. I'm Tanya Omar, and some of the stories coming up in today's news. The national government, through New Zealand On Air, has stopped funding your local regional news on Mainland TV, radio and online. Police warning as winter finally approaches. Mainland News has been offering local broadcast news to our region, funded by New Zealand On Air, for a decade. Mainland's news team over the years has prided itself on giving the people of the region a voice on issues that concern them and the community. Each year, Mainland TV has put in for news funding to enable the team to continue to be a community watchdog by bringing our local stories and an independent face to local news. Chrissy Smalls spoke to Mainland TV director Gary Watson about this latest New Zealand On Air decision.
Gary Watson, Mainland TV News, New Zealand On Air funded. After 10 years, the news is losing its funding. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we put in an application, but we smelt a rat from day one that this was going to be engineered for the big regions. And this is what's happened, is that we've missed out. And Allied Press, which is the Otago Daily Times, that company's family associates got around about $800,000 and we got absolutely nothing. So that covers Christchurch and Dunedin and a little bit on the west coast because these people own newspapers in these areas. Also, $400,000 went to NZME, which is News Talk ZB and the New Zealand Herald, the Auckland paper. So the whole concept of New Zealand On Air seems to us to have gone out the window, that it is now the print media and the big cities. And this is another classic example of money that's being sucked out of the regions of New Zealand to pay for amenities and services in the big cities. And we're seeing this with our tax on our fuel, paying for Auckland's traffic problems. We are seeing this with a whole raft of things. And this is something that the national government seems to be getting good at. It's very disappointing because we were putting the news on TV, on radio, online, and the numbers were quite substantial. So I say to people, if you would like to see the news come back on air, contact your local MP, Nick Smith, Damien OConnor, and write to the Minister, Amy Adams, and say, look, we want our news back on again. $128 million of taxpayer money is given to New Zealand On Air every year, of which around $2.5 million comes out of Nelson. So what are we getting? There's the problem.
Right. Okay, have you spoken to our local MP Nick Smith about this problem?
I have sent him an official letter. I have sent an official letter to Damien OConnor. We had somebody from New Zealand First here a few weeks ago, as you know, as you did an interview. They were astounded of what was happening. The other thing that does disturb me a little bit is that there were 4 people on the panel that made the decision. The CEO of New Zealand On Air, nice lady Jane, I've met her a few times. Keith Collins, really nice guy, but he used to work for Allied Press.
Right.
And then there was a guy, France, who did a report on regional TV, but we were the only ones he didn't actually come and see. So he got no idea on how we operate and therefore made recommendations to New Zealand On Air. But he never came and saw us. He went and saw a lot of the other stations, but never came and saw us. So how does he make an opinion on it? It's another question. And of course, the fourth guy on the panel was the guy from TV3 that made a mess of TV3. So, you've got to wonder sometimes about some of these decisions. I don't know whether it's just me getting grumpy in my old age or whether I'm just seeing more and more dumb decisions being made. But, this does seem very unfair for the people of the region. And of course, the news is a small cost to Mainland. We don't make money out of it. In fact, it's a small cost. But we're happy to do that. It makes a contribution to the news from general advertising. And that's all just part of my passion to support the local community. But without the funding, we can't do it totally by ourselves. News is very expensive to do. And you guys do a great job, let's face it, with the budget that we have and all of the team here. So, yeah, it's a bit sad. And as from Tuesday, that's our last news. And Graham is going to be putting on a little bit of information about the whole situation on Mainland over the coming weeks. So anyway, we're just saying, look, if people out there, we're doing everything to support almost everybody in the community, all the community groups, organisations we run community notices on, and all the stories. Of course, the councils, we're not always flavour of the month with them, but we've put a proposal to both the councils to say, well, would you like to put a lot of your items on Mainland and cover the cost of doing it? Haven't heard back from either of them and don't expect to. But at least we have gone through the motions of saying, hey, look, Nelson needs to keep a local news service, because without Mainland putting the news out there, that's it. You've only got the Fairfax
written media. We've got the written media, but as we can see, it's getting thinner and thinner.
Yep.
One of the things that Mainland News has been able to do, which perhaps the print media hasn't, is to be able to give people their own voice to talk about their own stories.
And well, Vox Pops, yes, we go downtown and we just talk to people on the street and say, hey, what do you think about this? Well, of course, we're going to lose all that, which is really is sort of acting to keep the councils honest and some of the politicians honest. So that's all going to go. And again, Nelson is losing a service that it's paying for, and now the money is going to go to the big cities again. Very disappointing.
It is disappointing, especially that we all pay taxes to have that representation, and we're not going to get it.
Anyway, we're just going to put things on hold so that with your support out there, we can put the news back on again. If some funding can be arranged, we'll get the news back on and get the team in action again and bring you your local news. So we're kind of counting on the people out there. If they really want their news back, we hope we can get their support.
Chrissy Small spoke to Labour MP for Tasman, Damien OConnor, about this decision by the New Zealand on-air funding body for regional news.
Mainland TV have lost their funding for the news. It finishes on the 12th of July. You've been a big part of our news, obviously, Damien, because we always catch up over what's going on in the community. How does it make you feel to know that the funding for the whole top of the South Island, from Marlborough down to Murchison, has gone?
Well, there are some questions need to be answered by New Zealand On Air, and I'm writing to them directly to find out why we in the top of the south are not getting our fair share of the community media funding. And the allocation that should be coming this way should be over $2 million. We're getting nothing to run community-based TV and media, and I think it's quite unfair. We've got a very smelly kind of an unholy alliance of media being proposed in this country, and there's a real danger that we'll have monopolistic control of that. And we've already seen, in my view, some very biased media that's very pro-government at the moment. Big organisations that are happy with the status quo, happy to take dominance in the area of media, and they're coming together in a possibly bigger organisation. And I don't think that's healthy for democracy. And for the top of the South, we've got to make sure that we've got an alternative voice to what are the big media players in this country, and that's Fairfax and NZME, and we've got to keep them honest.
Nelson City Council is wanting its citizens to live sustainably and smart, but according to one source, their words are floating about with no action to back up the rhetoric. I spoke with former General Secretary of the Sustainability Forum, Ian Challenger, about his thoughts on the Ilko Boswick Civic Awards, where Council is looking for local heroes and individuals and organisations that are living smart. I asked Ian if Council is making good on action plans for our region that are heading us toward smart living. Well, thanks Ian for your time. As part of the Sustainability Forum, the General Secretary till the end of 2015, as part of the Civic Awards, are we heading in the right direction as a region for smart living?
I I'd probably, yeah, it's a bit difficult to answer. I think the council has in the past done some good work around the Nelson 2060 plan and around the climate change policies that they've drawn up in the past, but personally I don't think that they've really delivered on that in the last few years. So all the words are floating around, but it's hard to see the action actually occurring.
So what do you think when they are asking for, people to find community heroes and leaders in smart living and perhaps are not living up to their own values?
I think it's quite disappointing, really. I mean, the fact that they're looking for heroes is great, and there are a lot of people out there that are doing some great things, but to essentially play lip service to the whole thing is, I think, quite disappointing, especially when they had put in such a huge amount of work around Nelson 2060 and have got the whole thing there, and there's very little evidence that they're actually trying to deliver on that. I think there's some good councillors, good people and good staff that want to and are doing things at their own level, but as a whole I don't think they're delivering.
Yes, well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I've been reading some of the literature on the website showing the action plans and the different plans, and then, the paper trail seemed to go cold at the end of last year with the Sustainability Forum, which was part of the action plans. And I have actually written and asked them what has come out of those meetings. Can you respond to any of that?
The forum was originally set up as a group that wanted to get sustainability moving, and it was made up of a lot of really good organisations, the big organisations in Nelson, NMIT, Cawthron, all sorts of the Environment Centre, the council, all sorts of people. And as a result of their pressure, that was where the Nelson 2060 thing came from. At some point there was a hiatus around 2013-14. We picked it up largely with the support of the Green Exchange, picked it up again in 2014-15, and we actually asked the council in 2015, I think it was, maybe 2014 year, as part of their annual plan process for $5,000 to support the forum to keep it going, and they didn't want to fund that. So they offered us meeting space, which wasn't the issue at all. We had lots of meeting places we could meet, but what we really needed was somebody to keep running the whole thing. So as you say, that it stopped at the end of 2015 when the funding ran out, and that's not council funding. That was from Green Exchange, so it was a completely separate organisation funding the forum to do its work. You're right that the forum was seen as one of the action deliverers of Nelson 2060, and they really never followed through with that. They actually stopped sending council staff to the forum meetings. There was a feeling that they didn't want councillors and council staff at the same meeting being able to talk freely, was the comment I heard. So we used to get up to 4 councillors attending, but they really felt as though they were there in a personal capacity rather than as councillors. There was certainly nobody speaking for the council. So,
We've got local elections coming up later this year. What would you say to Nelsonians when they're looking to elect councillors and a mayor?
Well, if they're serious about wanting to advance sustainability in the region, then they need to be looking at the councillors and see what their record is on sustainability, on trying to improve the region for a positive future, and see whether the councillors say they're going to deliver that, see whether the person that they're wanting to, that they're considering electing, what their views on sustainability and so on are before they think about electing people.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and we will let you know if we get a response from Council around these issues.
Okay, thanks very much.
The Sustainability Forum was initiated by Nelson City Council as part of its Climate Protection Action Plan. But as Mr Challenger points out, City Council stopped sending councillors to the meetings, and the perception was that councillors could not freely speak. Mainland TV has already been covering the concern around elected members essentially being gagged through its code of conduct. There are 6 categories to choose from in the Ilko Boswick Civic Award, and Smart Living covering sustainability is one of them. We asked local Nelsonians what they thought was smart living.
I really like the fact the council, I presume it's the council, built the houses up the brook, which is a community housing initiative. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'd like to see a lot more of that. There's a heck of a lot of single people living here on their own. Why aren't they all living together? It would make more sense.
What do I think smart living is? I agree with you. I think we should be using all our, not throwing stuff away, being able to use stuff again, like paper and things like that, just like they put out bins for it, and you should be able to pick it up and use it again. Yeah.
I'm trying to find some smart living for myself at the moment, because we had to sell our property and we can't find anywhere to live in Central City. There are no land available, and it's particularly the Wood area. Try and find somewhere there, modest, two bedroom place that's warm and insulated. If we went out of town, out this way, Stoke or beyond, you might find something, but the Central City's a bit short of land for residential land.
Last week, Tasman District Council addressed the Mapua Wharf budget blowout of around $500,000 overspend by council staff, as well as the divisive Mapua Wharf fence at last Thursday's council meeting. Chrissy Small caught up with the Tasman District Council councillor, Judine Edgar, over these 2 issues to find out more.
The budget blowout last week's meeting, what are your feelings on that? Was that acceptable?
At the end of the day, the budget blowout wasn't. The key, still for me, was about the absence of any process. So the reality is the money has been spent, and certainly there was a significant proportion that was to do with roading works, stormwater issues that were worse than initially identified, the finding of human remains. I'm not necessarily going to justify all of the costs. We didn't go line for line through it. Because the money has been spent, we do need to pay the contractors for work they have already done. Let's not make this worse. However, it still comes back down to process. And that's the key thing. I guess for me, confidence I have, or what we get as a councillor, is once we sign off a budget, approve a project, etc., set a limit, we know that that's where the expenditure is capped, and that if there is any variation, if there is a need for a change, staff need to come back and explain why. Now, certainly for some of those things around stormwater, etc., absolutely. It takes 3 days' notice for an extraordinary meeting of council, and it could have been signed off. So it really still, the fact it was 6 months later for a lot of this expenditure, that's the problem.
So it's really questionable, and where does the accountability, where does the buck stop with this overspend? I mean, as you say, processes weren't followed. Surely someone has to be accountable for that.
Well, ultimately the accountability is the chief executive, and for councillors, he's the only staff member we employ, so he's the only staff member that we truly get to give those messages to. Now, Mike Drummond, who's the corporate services manager, also stood up and said, well, this is my department. I'm the head of that department, so I'm also going to step up, take responsibility. So both Lindsay McKenzie, the CE, and Mike Drummond stepped up, took responsibility for this, took responsibility to ensure such things wouldn't happen again.
But it wasn't like Lindsay McKenzie wasn't the one that initiated the expenditure. Was Mike Drummond?
So the commercial area falls under his is in part of his department. So look, any trickle down accountability, I guess you could call it, is up to them. So by legislation, we actually have to be hands off with that level of staff. I know some people think we employ staff or choose staff can get to personally have accountability onto them, but we can't actually do that. So it's actually quite clearly spelt out in legislation, and so that's why our messaging needed to be very clear, very strong to the chief executive, and I think there was nothing he didn't get in our messaging to him on Thursday and at the previous meeting. So I think he's under no,
Illusions,
that's the word, as to our viewpoint on this. And
Okay, so at this stage, council don't know if anyone's going to be accountable for that overspend at this stage.
Well, I guess it's the degree of accountability is what we're not sure about. Certainly there will be accountability, but how that plays out in the workforce, that's what we don't know.
Another matter down at Mapua Wharf, of course, is that divisive fence that's gone up, or the posts that are there ready for the fence cladding. What is council doing about that? What have they told the chief executive that they want to see done with that fence?
Okay, so certainly we provided instruction because that project isn't complete. So we provided instruction that they needed to get an independent review, so it won't be the current staff who've been dealing with the matter. There will actually be an external review of the fire regulations and the regulations that we are told that are dictating a lot of where the fence needs to be, where things need to be positioned. Personally, I looked at the diagram on Thursday. I could see alternative options that could bring the fence back. I don't have a fire qualification, I will own that. But I could see some pragmatic alternatives. And so that's what we actually sought. Council sought some, come on, let's look at it. There's room, there's space, there's some alternatives. Yes, we acknowledge that things need to be there, etc. There's certain legislation we need to look at. But, yeah, things are going to be looked at before anything further happens.
We've got a lot of tension down the wharf between the cool storage building and the council, basically. It's not the tenants. The tenants actually get on really well, but they're feeling the pressure. We've got the landlord of the cool storage building has now put concrete partitions in, so no access to service vehicles. This could be seen as a direct result of the tension between council and the owner. Has that been addressed in council, those issues? No,
that actual one hasn't. But I guess one thing that was raised at council is Graham Stradling, who's a member of the Residents Association, brought in some possible designs of fencing and some bike racks. And so one thing I liked about that was it was solution focused and it was about working with the community. So that's one thing that I actually sort of added myself and everyone agreed with, is noting that let's work with the community. So, for example, the bike racks are already, the community has already raised the money, got them, so let's work with them. So there's a wharf group of sort of key people on the wharf, led by Councillor Brian Ensor, and so it's hoped we can get those relationships back by the fact that we do want to work with them.
Not against them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.
We're the team at JCar, right here in Nelson, 120 Hardy Street. Our shop is full of electronic items,
including security alarm systems, electronic components,
solar and power,
electronics toys,
sound systems, cables, and much, much more. JCar.
120 Hardy Street, Nelson.
Why would you want to pay as much as $1,000 for a single bed mattress when you can buy a high quality locally made mattress like this for as little as $220? And a queen size mattress could cost you in excess of $3,000, but at Nelson Beds you could have a mattress like this as low as $425. So why would you go out and spend a fortune on your child's bedroom when you can come to Nelson Beds and buy a complete single mattress and base set, a 7-drawer Scotch chest, a headboard and a 3-drawer bedside cabinet for as little as $979? So call and discuss our custom manufacturing options and local after sales service at Nelson Beds, Nelson's only bedding manufacturer.
Hi there, Julian Toon, Waimea Telecommunications. We install and maintain domestic and commercial satellite TV, UHF Freeview and Mainland TV installations in the Nelson, Tasman regions. We specialise in Panasonic telephone systems and provide communications, Wi-Fi, IT and wiring for internet, fibre, computers and DSL systems. At Waimea Telecommunications, we also provide specialist electronic systems for features such as a security camera you can watch on your TV, visitor alert systems and much more. Improve your security and communication and entertainment today. Call us on Waimea Telecommunications on 021 472297, ytel.co.nz.
Sit and Be Fit is on at the Victory Community Centre Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. at the Victory Community Church, 238 Upper Vanguard Street. School terms only. Fun while you get fitter, work at your level. For more information, please contact Shirley on 547 1433 or 021 121 8023.
Victory 60 Plus is on Tuesdays at 1:30 through to 3:30 p.m. at 238 Upper Vanguard Street. You can join in for cards, games and a cuppa. For more information you can contact Jan on 546 9057 or 027 4577 955.
On behalf of the team here at Mainland Television News, thank you for joining us, and we'll bring you the latest news and events from around the region again tomorrow.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.